John. Again, I'm Kevin McGinnis with Colectica, and I am the Chief Fair Data Evangelist and Director of Business Development. Also online with us is Ben Adams, a senior engineer with us. And today, I'm going to give a very brief overview of Colectica so you have a background of who we are, where we're coming from, so a background on Colectica and our products. And then we'll dig into the what's new in our latest versions of Colectica 6.2 and 7.0. So, very brief overview of Colectica and our products here. Colectica has been around for about 15 years, and we've been very focused on just metadata documentation, particularly with DDI lifecycle. So software for standards-based data documentation, including survey design and specifications, data documentation, and it includes the study and process documentation as well. You'll see Colectica used by many national statistical offices, research data organizations, and also data archives across the world. And these customers are using Colectica to not only catalog their data sets, particularly with repeated or longitudinal studies, but document the data and then publish the data in interactive web portals, codebooks, and data dictionaries. So ultimately, the goals you achieve when you have Colectica are letting researchers discover your data across more data sets. You help people to understand the data and its provenance or lineage, and you allow your data to be more widely used or cited across the world. So some typical examples of some national statistical offices include what you're seeing there. So many across the world that are using Colectica. And here's some examples of some repeated studies. Repeated or longitudinal studies being used with Colectica. And then one more example here of some data archives that are using Colectica. So we have a very broad reach and a very broad spectrum of customers that we are working with across the world with Colectica. So the way we interact with customers is mostly selling our off-the-shelf software, which includes regular updates of that. But we also provide custom software development. So we help to either customize our software for your specific needs. And we also provide metadata consulting and training. And that includes DDI, of course. So the core Colectica platform solutions include Colectica Designer, which is our full metadata editor, kind of our main product for the most part. We also have Colectica Questionnaires, which is a survey authoring tool. And then Colectica Repository and Portal. The repository is a centralized authoritative metadata store. And then the portal is the interactive search and browse, where you can search and browse metadata on a portal online. So also we have Colectica SDK, or our software developer kit, which is a developer library. So you can either have Colectica further customize your software, or you can use that software yourself to further develop the software to meet your specific needs for your environment. So some unique features of why people are using Colectica. So Colectica can do variable level documentation and is really good with the lineage. So what does that mean? It means your source questions from surveys can be, you can see where these are coming from. You can see source variables for the derived data. And Colectica is also very good at helping with concordance. So you can see the changes across time or changes across studies, like how specifically that data changed. And it does that using conceptual variables or represented variables. Colectica is also very good at reusing metadata, which is kind of what DDI is based off of, the reuse of metadata being a very important feature there. And that includes classifications, code lists, and questions, etc. And of course, Colectica is based off of open data standards, particularly with DDI lifecycle and the GSIM model. And another unique feature is that it is extensible. So very customizable. You can take our core solution and work with it to develop whatever you need it for, including data connectors, or creating custom reports or custom workflows. So we'll get into what's new in Colectica 6.2, and that was just released in September. There are hundreds of new features, but I'll cover just 9 of them here. I won't read these off, but we'll cover each one of these 9 in the next several slides. All right, so the first one is calculation and display of weighted summary statistics. So we have a new support for storing weighted summary statistics, where you can automatically calculate the unweighted or the weighted summary statistics within Colectica Designer. And the designer will find all variables that you mark with a is weight flag and then display them in calculate statistics dialog. And we'll show an example of that on the next slide. The Kleptico portal will support displaying the weighted summary statistics in frequencies, and one summary is calculated per weight variable selected. So let's look at an example here. On the left here, you can see we have we're working with a variable, and down here it's kind of hard to see, but there's a highlighted area showing variable as a weight is checked. And if you're familiar with Colectica, you know that when you click on calculate summary statistics with that checked, you will now see the summary statistics options pop up with these weight variables. So you can select the weight variables you want to see the summary statistics for. And on this next slide, we see the results of that. So here's the variable that's selected, and then here are the summary statistics on the right-hand side. Used to be just one tab for the unweighted summary statistics, but now we have a tab for each one of the weighted variables as well. So you can see those very easily in Colectica now. The next feature in Colectica 6.2 that we'll talk about is SCOS control vocabulary import and usage enhancements. Excuse me. So Colectica Designer can now import controlled vocabularies, referred to as CVs sometimes, and they're saved in that SCOS RDF format that includes the CVs from the CESDA CV Manager, if you're familiar with the CESDA over in Europe. Colectica Designer now allows usage of those control vocabularies for most code value types, and users can create their own DDI code list and then use them as controlled vocabularies. So we'll show an example of that in the next slide too. Administrators can specify which of those control variables should be used, control vocabularies should be used in each code value field. And actually, in a different EDI session today, our colleague Jeremy Iverson gave a very detailed presentation on control vocabulary functions. So if you want to check out that recording later, you can get more information from that. So an example of control vocabulary here within Colectica Designer, we are selecting an analysis unit using a drop-down menu of control vocabularies. So another neat feature of Colectica 6.2. Next feature, native storage for DDI other material files. So Colectica repository now supports storing the file deposits for DDI other materials. You can upload files like associated PDFs, Word documents, or other files, and then have them stored in the other material metadata on the repository. And you can upload via Colectica Designer or by using the REST API. We're using automatic SHA-256 hashing to verify the file integrity, and also Kleptico Workflow, which is another Colectica solution. It's able to replicate the stored files during metadata replication from one repository to another. So that's another sleek feature we have for the DDI. Next feature for Colectica 6.2 again, customizable facets and enhanced Elasticsearch indexer. So Colectica's portal Elasticsearch is now customizable by the user. You can specify content in multiple languages and use the Elastics per language indexing and stemming features. And you can use the Colectica Supplier Developer Kit, Colectica SDK, to add your custom search fields to the portal's advanced search page and have those fields indexed into the Elastic. So, and also with this, the new indexing is 25 times more performant than the previous version. So it also indexes the DDI content in real time as it is added to that Colectica repository. So next feature is still talking about Colectica 6.2 here, individually managed DDI contributors and roles. So Colectica Designer is now allowing specifying DDI individuals and associating those items to contributor roles. So essentially that allows reusing the DDI individual and DDI organization citations across the different studies and data sets. So citing contributors using DDI individual item descriptions allows for searching relationships to find all the contributors' content. So you can kind of see an example down here where we are selecting the contributor to be Ben Adams. And so now it's easy to cite him across many different studies and data sets because it's just logged right in there, just a matter of selecting it. Okay, another new feature of Colectica 6.2 is Qualtrics import to DDI. So Qualtrics, the survey software, allows a download of survey descriptions in a proprietary QSF file. And now Colectica Designer can convert those Qualtrics QSF survey definition files into DDI lifecycle. So most survey specification features of the DDI lifecycle are supported, including the multiple languages and different question types. Okay, and another new feature, the new difference viewer is available. It's showing DDI items or versions. So you're going to compare different items or compare between versions of the same item. It'll show additions and removals, and we'll show an example of that on the next slide. Particularly, the difference viewer can compare DDI items to show an overview of larger changes for some items, such as variables in a data set or categories in a code list. So let's look at an example of that. So here we have a survey with one version 7 and one of version 8, and the changes are highlighted across what specifically changed, with the darker highlight showing like what specifically changed. For example, here we see a capital M on mandated versus a lowercase m. So very clearly highlighted, showing the changes of the DDI item in plain day. Okay. Also, with this Kleptico 6.2, the Nestar and DDI import improvements are available. So Kleptico has been working with NSD to migrate their Nestar servers to DDI lifecycle. And now we map more of the DDI2 elements and properties in our internal DDI model. So this DDI2 to DDI3 import has been made things much more precise throughout this cooperation with NSD. All right, and one last new feature to highlight for Kleptico 6.2 is the Xpass profiles and validation. The Kleptico Designer can now validate DDI items to comply with user-defined properties, and those Xpass can be used to create rules and are stored in a validation file. So multiple profile validations can be created or chosen by the user to perform a validation. So those were 9 of my favorite changes to Colectica and Colectica 6.2. And of course, those changes are available in 7.0 as well, but there's also more features available in 7.0. And I'll turn that over to Ben to give us an update on that. So Ben, if you can.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about some of the Colectica 7 new features, which is just released today. We're pretty excited about it, which has about 140 new features, updates, and improvements. And there's the changelog if you can see it there. And again, I'm Ben Adams. I'm a software engineer here at Colectica. So these are more things that I've been working on. I'd like to share with you. Next slide there, Kevin. Yeah. So a great, like, an exciting new feature about Colectica 7 is that it runs on Linux now. So that's because we've upgraded our code base to .NET 5. Basically, if you're familiar with our products at all, Portal and Repository, they were run on an earlier version of .NET, which required basically a Windows install and IIS to be configured to run these products. And with a new upgrade, the .NET 5 is platform independent, basically, so it can run on Windows or Linux. So you don't need a separate. If you don't have any Windows servers, you don't need to have that to run our product. This simplifies deployment as well. If you can run our products in Linux, you can put them in a Docker container, which makes them easy to deploy on on a server, so you don't have the hassle of configuration that we've run into a lot with past installs of Portal and repository. And when you can put it in a Docker, then you can do this large scale deployment using K8s orchestration, so you can have multiple Docker containers that are all serving up your content. It makes it all a whole bunch easier. So yeah, our products are running on Linux now, which is pretty cool. Another thing that we've done in Colectica 7 is we've combined repository and Portal. These are two separate products we had in the past. Sort of that's just how they evolved. A repository is basically a SOAP WCF API that allowed access to the data, and Portal is the web interface that lets you view all of your data in your repository. And sort of the natural evolution of this is just to combine them. The SOAP WCF API is less common now than just the REST API. So we're moving everything over to a REST API in Colectica 7. So we've just combined those two things together, and just Portal gives you access to your data and also has the REST API built in. So it's just one product now that you have to install. You don't have to juggle these sort of multiple things to get it to work together, simplifying installation. Last, we've done a lot of improvements to modernize and style the Colectica portal. So we've upgraded our HTML package to Bootstrap 5, which is the most recent available. And in that, we've made web accessibility improvements. So for those of you who are worried about screen readers and being having your data and all your fields be accessible, we've made sure that that they all are. And also, we've improved our content security policy headers to remove things like inline styling and inline JavaScript, things like that we might have had here and there. That's all in separate files now, so you can have turn on CSP headers to make your site more secure with sort of the next generation of HTML policy there. But lots of great stuff in Colectica 7. Instead of hundreds of improvements, we had about 100, and there's fewer line items this time because this was such a big upgrade to this new version of .NET. There were just fewer individual things to show, but just this huge new step from going to .NET 5, which is pretty cool. All right, Kevin, you can have the reins back there.
All right, thanks, Ben. So a reminder, like we just kind of went over some of the highlights of many different changes of the software, but we do provide very detailed webinars and demonstrations that are available. So feel free to reach out to us for those to really dig into the software. And we do provide evaluations for you guys to use the software for a month or two for free and get a feel for the functionality and features that you can get with Colectica. So with that, what questions do you guys have for us